They turned out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Hey, Tim.
Hi, Ryan.
Good to see you.
You too.
And hello, fellow horror fans and any curious onlookers. My name is Ryan McDuffie.
My name is Tim Aslin.
And you are listening to a new episode, the current episode of Dismembering Horror.
That's right. It's a podcast where Ryan and I dismember with precision, just like your favorite horror villains, all the various aspects of a film every week.
We watch a film and immediately after, hopefully, as soon after as we can, talk about it, and hope you will share with us that fun and enthusiasm and excitement when you first watch a horror movie and want to talk about things that worked for you, things that didn't work, and anything that's interesting.
Yep. Like a regular old conversation between two horror pals.
Exactly. And what did we watch this week?
That is the perfect question. What did we just watch?
We watched Tetsuo the Iron Man in our J horror kick we've been on.
Oh my god.
The second Japanese horror film.
This was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was an hour and 4 minutes, I believe, but it's certainly
felt like a lifetime.
Yeah, a lot to unpack. I'm so curious to hear you summarize this film,
God,
Tim.
Okay.
Can you do
I
that
can do
for
it.
us?
I can do it. Here we go. Hang on. I got it. I got this. It's let me crack some knuckles. Here we go. Okay. Tetsuo, the Iron Man, is the story of how... Come on. Here we go. Tetsuo, the Iron Man, is the story of an average businessman racked with guilt and his journey possibly into madness, or maybe it's real. We don't know. And his metamorphosis into an iron monster. A machine metal monster.
Yes.
How's that?
That's great. And this
with
kind of
lots of dick imagery.
This is this film is exactly why I think it's good we have the summary portion, because it's like, all right, what did we just watch? Let's just try to say it in our own words.
Yeah.
But I mean the actual thrust of it, though, which I think is worth mentioning, is what this guy who we'll refer to as the Iron Man, he hits who is a pre-existing metal fetishist.
Right. So the person that he hits with his car
Yeah.
is already has a metal fetish, which is essentially the opening scene.
And so it's sort
established.
of almost like an ongoing, just like anime fight scene almost in a lot of ways too.
It's so intense.
Yeah.
This whole movie is like, it is like top to bottom, just relentless, in your face, cacophonous, just madness. madness.
And Tim's hands were on his face with his eyes closed over his mouth. That's why he sounded differently just then. He's rubbing his eyes.
Holy hell.
As he said that.
It was a lot.
Well, I agree with all that. And I've been trying to think how I'd rate it in our rating system. Because this one would be pretty high up there for me in that it hits like what the most important check boxes are for a film for
That's
me.
interesting.
And I'd want to say, so if our two highest ones in our ratings of 4 are, buy it, I recommend buying it and owning it, to next being rent it. For me, personally, I feel like it's a hearty rental, but at the same time, there's a part of me that wants to own it just to show other people who haven't seen it, like ourselves before today.
That's so cruel of you.
If I don't know, maybe if it was a right,
I get it.
There's a good release of it. And on sale, I could probably see myself getting excited and buying it years from now.
I have a very mixed feeling about this because it is so jam-packed with, I think, important and like quintessential elements that sort of are even more far-reaching than just the horror genre, that I feel like it needs to be watched, but for me it's a hard watch, and I don't feel like I can be like, you gotta go buy this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if you can do it, do it.
Right. So see it, if you're saying see it once, and that falls pretty laundry in the rental. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, but even that, like, I'm almost like, I don't know if I would want to subject somebody to renting this.
But who are we talking to here?
I don't know.
This is not.
Who are we talking to?
When we're saying this, I
That's
don't.
True.
It's how I either take this recommendation is either for ourselves and if not that, other horror fans.
Yeah,
but
I think
definitely
you're right.
not
You're
your
right.
average Joe movie
No.
goer. So I think you're safe on not including them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because, like, yes, for the audience that we assume is listening to this,
Yeah.
rent it.
Yeah.
Rent it, and you'll probably go, holy shit.
If you haven't seen it already, because a lot of these are the sort of quintessential or just next to quintessential horror films that just Tim and I haven't happened to see yet, which this probably falls under.
Man. Yeah, that's actually, you would probably know this better than I do. Is this sort of considered, because I've never seen this on, a list of the quintessential horror films.
It is if
to
you add
see.
cult to that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I get that.
Cool. Can we, should we move on to things that worked for us?
Yes, we can.
What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked for you?
Man, this movie.
Do you want to start or should I?
I mean, I have a good amount.
Me too.
Okay.
Me too.
Mine are gonna be quick though, because I think you're gonna dive in a little more than I am. But there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to like about this movie. My very first response to this is like this is essentially a amalgamation of David Lynch, Romero, Cronenberg, John Carpenter, Kafka, who's not a filmmaker, H.R. Geiger.
Yeah.
It is so much of things that we love, all in one. Like it's hard. I'm like, it was really intense. If you couldn't tell, I'm like still a little like overwhelmed by it.
So that intense. Oh, sorry.
But just that, like, it's like all those things that in and of themselves individually are pretty fucking intense things in a 1 hour madness, like put it in a can and shake it up, is crazy. That this even exists is crazy.
Put
to
it
me.
in a rusted can.
Yeah, exactly.
And shake it up.
It is crazy that all of those vibes are in one movie.
Mm-hmm. But yet around just a simple idea, which I think are just
totally
some of the
simple.
best horror movies.
Yeah.
Are just, okay, this is all it's about.
It's fucking crazy.
It's all in the execution, which is a lot of what I loved.
Yeah. So for me, like, just the fact that those elements are all there. And this came out in 80?
89.
What?
Yeah.
89?
Mm-hmm.
Man, it feels older than that. Okay, so I would even add then Sam Raimi.
That's actually something I wrote down is, which,
For sure.
Which, I don't know, can I get into what I,
Yeah.
why I wrote Sam Raimi down? Something I loved about it is the freneticism.
Yeah.
And then like what you just said and what I read on the poster, people say it's like Lynch meets Cronenberg, and I was just like, okay, and I'd add Sam Raimi.
Totally.
It's the freneticism, but that for me, like also in the specificity as far as like relating to his style, Evil Dead style, whatever, is
Not for love of the game style.
What is it? Oh yeah, no. Yeah, so I said freneticism. So like the moments where it's like there you have the fracas, the fisticuffs with no music,
Yeah.
and sort of like intense camera work, and the stop motion.
Right, totally.
That was all very Sam Raimi-esque for me, and I loved in it.
Yeah, for some reason my timeline was off. I for some reason assumed that this was predating Evil Dead.
Just because the black and white.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, it is so low budget, but
it works
what they're
for it.
doing in this low budget is incredible.
Yeah, so the stop motion, just because I mentioned it, can we vet that thing?
Sure.
So it was stop motion, not just in like the sort of the props and effects that you typically think of, which it did do and did great with like the iron, like snakes going,
exactly.
snaking
like
around.
Wires just flipping out.
Yeah, but like also just in the sets moving around, but then the people moving around, like flying across the ground and flying all over, just sort of like, where we're like standing in one place and being propelled forward. It was just a sort of way this movie operated, how people got around. And like whether they're fighting each other, which it was just a moment of ecstasy going from one place to the other. It was that cool stop motion style that you see of like where someone just stands there and then moves a few feet and then take another picture or whatever. But it was done beautifully.
I think what really, really enhanced the impact of that stop motion or made it like just super intense is the rhythm of the music is so spot on with this rhythm of the stop motion. Like it is so driving the whole time because it's a very percussive soundtrack, but it is locked in rhythmically in such an intense way.
Yeah.
And it is, like I said, it is so unrelentless. It's fucking crazy. Like my brain hurts in the same way that my brain hurt after I watched Requiem for a Dream, right? Like that movie is so in your face and nonstop for much longer than an hour. Like you walk out of that theater going, holy shit, I need to decompress.
Actually, since you brought up Darren Aronofsky, I was just for some reason thinking of Pi, or not for some reason, because of the black and white low budgets. Going into this, though, with just my sort of preconceptions about, okay, I know it's like black and white, low budget, but like with Pi and even, Requiem for a Dream, as intense as those get, I feel like there is a clear trajectory and build.
100%, yes.
But this one, it just starts off from the get-go. Some of those early scenes of just, it all comes pretty early, of them fighting each other.
Like Pi and Requiem have it is a cascade, right? Like it's like the avalanche starts with just a couple like little pebbles. And then like builds momentum, and you eventually are just getting crushed, you know,
Yeah.
falling down the side of this hill.
This starts with a solid rock getting thrown at your face.
Yeah, it is real intense.
Which I say heck yeah to, and it was great. It was an hour long, and it didn't need to be any longer.
I don't think I could have handled it if it was
Right.
longer.
It was perfect.
There were a couple moments when I was like, we need to be done real soon.
Yeah. Well, that's what, like I said, just as soon as there was any kind of moment where you know, I thought maybe, I don't want to say like where I know where it's exactly going, but like where I had some sort of emotional, just kind of like, okay, well, what else? Or, okay, we've seen it. It goes somewhere else,
yeah.
and it stays fresh and interesting.
Yeah.
And just, again, specific moments as an example of that, like one of my favorite moments was when so you have the metal fetishist and the Iron Man
Right.
are two turning into metal people. The fetishist says to the Iron Man something that's like, wait till your brain is metal, then you can see the world a whole new way, or like see a whole new world, or something like that. And then it just jumped into this literal like other world, apocalyptic world. So
That's right, yeah.
up to this point, we had just sort of been in warehouses and streets and subways and machine yards and stuff like that. But then to all of a sudden jump into this other realm.
Exactly. Realm's a good word. It was sort of a very foreign landscape. You know, that you're sort of. It took me, because this movie is actually a bit visually confusing. You know, like a lot of the time you're trying to catch up and figure out what you're actually seeing, right? Because so much of it is just piles of different metal things, sort of, you know, and black and white. So it's hard to get a grasp. Like a lot of time it'd take me a second to realize that we were like seeing the metal fetishist amongst these like piles of metal.
Oh, there's his face. There's an arm.
And I
there's
was
a
like,
hand.
oh, right. You know, so going into this other landscape suddenly that seemed just, it had like fuzzy round ball tree type things. And I was like, it took me a good 15 seconds to be like, what am I looking at right now?
Right. So anytime that happened, it's like I just sit up in my seat again.
Yeah.
You know?
No,
I
it's
love
great.
that.
This movie is, if nothing else, it's just constant right turns.
Right. Which I love.
Or left turns, I
And
don't
when
know.
I say that's like what a key thing for me to thoroughly enjoy a film, that's it in a nutshell, is like keep me not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Do you have other specific moments that you got excited or that you especially
Well,
liked?
you know me. Nothing pleases me more than some real graphic, phallic, like weird penis horror.
I wrote I also wrote the penis stuff.
It's all over the place, and it like, I think I'm just a 6-year-old. You know what I mean? Like dick humor and fart humor and stuff like that. It just amuses me.
I'm just a 12-year-old,
so much.
so
Wow.
same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just like, I'm so amused by it. It goes real far.
Well, so let's break this down though, because this is we're excited about. We're actually talking about it's an extended sequence of one penis thing that leads into another. Because first we have sort of the nightmare rape scene,
which is
where the girlfriend grows like the
sort of a
metal
tube?
phallus tube thing.
Yeah, it's real long.
And then
and
just
creepy.
is sort of like doing a dance thing, and then sort of assaulting him, and then rapes him. You see it.
Right. That's real intense.
That was.
Because that thing, this is really good, like, anticipation, horror, and payoff, right? You show this long phallic tube coming out of her, and it's what, maybe 4 or 5 feet long,
And it's loping. Is that a word?
Yeah,
kind of just
sure.
like a
trunk,
like like Evil Dead 2, the Henrietta extended neck.
totally. Yeah, and there's something very unnatural and freaky about it alone. But you know right away, you're like, uh-oh, that's good. This isn't going to end well.
Yeah.
And then the execution of it actually, penetrating him goes on and on. Like, it's it's really intense to watch the
Right.
whole length of this thing between cuts just keep going in him. I thought it was going to come out his mouth. I thought we were going to do like some sort of human centipede type style, like graphic craziness.
That's
and
great.
it would
Yeah.
have been fun. I would have been like, yeah, that seems about right.
You saw that coming. But then that sequence goes right into where he sort of transforms sort of a biggest next step of both the drill penis growing and his face turning like into metal lumps and bits.
Yeah.
So that's where that happens, and the girlfriend's basically as soon as he grows the drill. Which was so cool when it grows. Not only does it come out of his groin, but it's also like you see these like things shooting out from under a shirt on his back, like his whole body's just sort of like
it's that effect. Whatever they were doing was really great. It's unsettling as hell, but it's also just freaky and cool looking. Mm-hmm. It's almost like they put bladders of some sort and were like inflating them under his shirt, but like super aggressively.
Yeah.
I don't know how they did it, but it looked cool.
Then I thought this was really interesting stuff going on where first he's just sort of cowering and saying, don't look at me. And then she's going, I have a high scare tolerance. And of course, when she does see him, she screams.
Right.
But then from that moment on, he turns from a sort of like a still himself with some sort of sense of control to like the Wolf Man, the Iron Man gets released. And he basically tries to like assault her. And that kind of becomes ravenous.
I think that's my favorite scene.
Yeah.
The execution of it is such a it really made me feel like Night of the Living Dead. It's a really good suspenseful monster versus, whatever final girl, I guess in this case, but it's sort of got that vibe of like high stakes, close quarters, graphic like intensity, people are stabbing each other, like it is really, really intense and just feels like a horror film.
Yeah.
In the way that I like that stuff. And so to have, it's just so amazing to me that this movie has that scene and then it has like 20 other scenes that are other great things from other great, not from, but like that equate to great moments in other horror films that are totally different genres. It's not just a slasher, it's not just
this is still totally its own thing
over the place.
Yeah,
in the best way.
So still on this scene though, the drill, the drill piece. I mean, it's
hilarious.
Yeah, it's
looking
horrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
Which, hilarious and horrifying, which I think is kind of that it tapped into, maybe this is a super obvious metaphor, but like the male experience thing of being like, how the phallus means, first of all, so just obvious. You can't hide it. It's not going to go anywhere. And it's literally drilling like a drill. So that idea that it's like the penis is this, or that part of you, that urge is like both an uncontrollable thing that's equally a part of you, yet something you're separate from because you can't control it.
Right. I think thematically there's a lot of really well constructed sort of metaphors or themes revolving around shame and around fetishes and around which are intertwined in themselves, around guilt. Like there's some really, really good stuff because on the surface level, you just have the basic like, oh, this guy, hit a dude in the road with his car and then dumped the body, and this movie's about him feeling guilty over it and his sort of losing his mind over it. Like you could just take it as that on surface level, like that's the plot. But what you're actually seeing throughout the movie is a far deeper sort of exploration in what God, how do I even explain this? It's the craziness of the level of metaphor that they're using to depict versions of guilt or versions of shame, or you know what I mean? That it's so intense and awesome to me.
It is, and I think it's so effective, not because the filmmakers there going, okay, what's a metaphor for how I feel? It's because, they're just from his
Right.
deepest place or from this collective place. Like when he thinks, giant drill penis or like woman extending a phallus and raping guy, it's not like he's thinking of it, he's just relating to those things as powerful things. And then you don't have to stop and question why they are. That's what we're doing right now.
Right,
It's
right.
fun.
Yeah.
But I just
We're
think that's so
dismembering
cool
it.
when something is so, when something's so powerful, it's it's because it comes from that raw, real place.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in a way, I think you could probably, I think this is true with a lot of art. You, the viewer, or the critic, or whatever, you're gonna be able to peel it apart in a bunch of different ways, and the person who created it, they may be like, sure, you can think all
Right.
those things. It doesn't even matter what I was going for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But and maybe they weren't consciously going for those things, but that's just what's in us.
Yeah. It's like when you look at a filmmaker's body of work and all of a sudden, they realize, oh, wow, I do this thing.
Yeah,
Over and over.
Right.
Geez, what does that say about me? Or in
Yep.
this case, a lot of, the guilt stuff.
Man,
All this. Oh, it was great.
it's real
though.
intense.
Thank you.
How many times have I
Japan.
said that?
I think I've counted about 7.
Yeah.
7 intenses.
You're probably right.
Just other big, we talked about the black and white. Guess you kind of mentioned it, saying how maybe it made things, both, I don't know, a little hard, not hard to follow in a bad way in that way, but it's like,
No, not in a bad way at all.
Yeah.
It just it's for lack of a better way of putting it, it's literally blurring the sort of line of what you're taking in.
yeah.
It's sort of, and it seems, I'm assuming it's very purposeful. It's sort of like the very opening shot is an incredibly hard to follow handheld shot. It is so shaky that I was like, oh no, like
What was the oh yeah.
it's in sort of in the village. It's
Just someone walking around. Yeah.
yeah, it's a guy. I don't know. It's like a worker or whatever. I don't know. He wasn't the fetishist, right?
No,
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't think so. But yeah, it's just a guy walking through sort of like a kind of
Right,
a
right.
villagey area, and like puts water on the back of his neck or
Right.
something, and then like walks off. But it is hard to watch because it is like the most shaky handheld shit.
Right. But at the same time, it totally just works like, oh, we're here. I don't
No,
know. It
but I
works
think
for-
that's
yeah.
the point, right? Let's open with really hard to watch so that you know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
It's saying like, just so you know, this is what this movie's going to be.
guess
Get ready.
I just wouldn't use the term like hard to watch because for me, it's just,
Sure.
I can get that. Maybe that's true for, I don't know, for
Visually
some people,
hard
but-
to follow what you're supposed to look at.
Mhm.
That's sort of more what I mean.
I guess for me, it's just purely aesthetic. It's not.
Okay.
It's aesthetic to give a feel. So what I wanted to mention about the black and white, though, which I think you're kind of getting at there, is like how it, I don't know, people say like black and white, it makes it so like, let's say the gore is more bearable because it's like less visceral or something. That's something I've heard, but for me, it's like this just makes it so much more real, whether it's the effects coming across or the gore moments or just something about the setting. Like this movie, I don't know, the black and white. Like I saw Fury Road and its black and white re-release,
The Mad Max, yeah.
and I had only been able to appreciate and enjoy and love the movie in theory before seeing it. I was distracted by like all the CG and stuff, but then once I saw it in black and white, oh god, I loved it so much. I was like in this post-apocalyptic world watching it happen, which is the same with this.
I think there's something about the stripped away nature of this in particular, but black and white in general. It kind of, it's almost like less to distract you and more to sort of get like into.
Right,
that
which
a
is
weird-
why I think when doing any film from the filmmaker should go, does this need color?
Right.
And then say why.
Yeah.
So yeah, we talked about frenetic and stop motion. Oh, I thought an interesting effect used throughout it was when it was cutting to stuff that was shot on video versus
Yeah.
the 16 millimeter film. And I was trying, it was kind of like anything that was a memory or a possibility or a dream to sort of, but it was used in, I don't know, it was used in this interesting deliberate way of like, we are switching to video, including like the sort of the tape black and white fuzziness going in and out of it.
I think that there's a little bit of point of view, like it's used a couple times, like when the metal fetishist is inside of the hunk of sort of scrap that's on the ground early on when the Iron Man has not transformed at all, and he's sitting next to the woman who attacks him later. They use it as a point of view shot from the scrap metal on the ground when she's leaning in to like touch it. Yeah. And so I think maybe there's a connection there because later when they use it again when there's an old man who I presume, I think he's supposed to be a doctor, and he's sitting in a chair in front of him I can't remember exactly what he's saying, but it's something like, I told you this would happen kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a memory of the metal fetishists.
Right. When he says that if you shouldn't be alive, if we remove it, you'll be dead.
Right, yeah. And the metal fetishist had said something later about how he started with just the one piece of metal in his head, and it was rusted. So I think that is what the device was. It's the point of view of the metal fetishist.
Yeah. Oh, because the accident at the beginning switched to that with seeing like the grill of the car.
Right. So that's my hot take.
Well, that was just, I think, a totally neat original just thing to do of using video and film together like that. And then just when you're talking about this, as far as like specific creative, cool filmmaking shot things, just two things I really loved, two shots, I guess, were when he was on the phone. I forget exactly what it was, but it was when the camera was just panning left and right faster and faster, like it didn't fix on him, but it's sort of the camera would like veer to the side rather than just staying on him, and then it went right too far and then went left too far and then went faster and faster.
I don't remember that.
That was
sounds
cool.
Awesome.
It was very cool.
I was probably rubbing my eyes.
It was very cool. And then the other shot that I really liked I thought was creative, which everything was, but just another specific one that stood out was it was towards the end when the Iron Man and the fetishist were like conjoining in different ways, and sort of like as that was leading up, and it's like whether, I don't know, it seemed like it was sort of a metaphorical or like a non-literal moment which was represented suchly by the camera was upside down. Yeah. So we saw them upside down, and they were just sort of like non-dancing, slow dancing with each other with each of their arms that were on the same side conjoined facing each other.
So I read a little like brief overview or review, and they mentioned that moment as the thing that's connecting them is a metal umbilical cord.
Yeah, it looked like that.
Yeah.
Oh God, that was so neat.
And that they're sort of in utero almost. It was really interesting.
And just by having it upside down, that gave it the in utero feel. Yeah. And just sort of look at it non-literally. It was so great.
And I think that moment is actually probably one of the more important moments, just from a storytelling point of view, to give us just a moment of like respite from the craziness, because we've been so like just bombarded.
Yeah.
And then suddenly we get to kind of the climax of the movie, and we get to see these guys just as guys in this moderately peaceful, albeit upside down moment, where we're like, oh God, okay, I can breathe for just a second.
Also, like, can kind of make us sympathize with them that they're still a person somewhere in there, and that to conjoin allowed for some sort of peace for them.
Yeah. Well, and also one of the next lines is the fetishist saying sort of like, with our love together we can, change the world kind of thing.
Yeah, which
and it's like, oh, cool.
brings us. That's pretty much
there. They are
the ending right there, which I loved.
Which you like the giant version of them? Like one of the last shots from behind. It is just a dick. I mean, it is like mushroom-headed penis phallus.
Yeah, it's like a dog penis. It's kind of that.
It's so,
like
so overt.
The mountain point.
Yeah, exactly.
But then they're just cruising down the street, presumably
in
to take over
little stop motion
the world. That was great. I mean, I loved. This was something else I loved was just the transformation cycle and trajectory of just having that first sort of scene we talked about of first getting it on his face and getting the drill, and then but being taken all the way to the blob self
Right. Yeah.
that he turned into at the end. It was like a metal blob with his like face kind of sticking out of it, and maybe he's in there somewhere too.
Yeah.
And then that into a conjoining. That was the fact that it went blob and then conjoining as part of the
they really went full on. Like they didn't just stop at, oh, you're an Iron Man.
Yeah.
It kept going.
So as
by the way, speaking of that in particular, the body horror of this is so good. I generally am quite a big fan of body horror. Like The Fly is like just everything to me.
Yeah.
Right? Especially with some kitschiness to it. Mm-hmm. It makes me so
some
satisfied.
Goldblum kitschiness.
Oh yeah. How could you go wrong?
Yeah.
So the execution of the body horror in this is so good. Even though it like we said, it is low budget, it does not matter.
Right.
Like it's just cool.
The ideas are so there and potent, and it comes through. That's my word.
I'm amazed. I'm really amazed at the design and just the complexity and sort of awesomeness, for lack of a better term, of
slow
the
down.
design.
Slow down.
It's amazing to me.
You were left in awe by it.
Yeah.
Great. So
It's
then that's
so-
okay. You use that word.
Yeah.
It was a true sense of the word.
Yep.
Great. Which I was too. So, God, it was great. It was a great movie.
There are movies where that is attempted and just doesn't work.
Yeah. It's
I
probably
would
because they're
say-
trying to duplicate something versus
could be,
being
yeah.
true to itself. I love any movie that like you can't really use quote unquote logic to deconstruct it, but because it has its own internal logic that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yes. Whereas normally I would be the one getting like wrapped up in like, this doesn't make sense. This movie, it doesn't need it. It doesn't try. It's you accept it right off the bat.
Yeah, exactly.
Just get on the ride.
I feel like we should move on just because we're
Cool.
clearly excited about it, but got to move on at some point.
Yeah, such is life.
All right, so things that didn't work for us.
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
Well, I really didn't. I don't know if I had anything because you'll see I started to write how the girlfriend's death didn't quite work for me as far as like, okay, wait, did she just kill herself? Which just didn't, I wasn't crazy about. But then at the same time, as soon as I was feeling that, I thought, this is coming off what I just said, can't using logic to deconstruct something because it has its own inner logic. That just felt weird to apply any sort of rhyme or reason to anything. So
Yeah.
even that moment where I was just kind of like, what? Okay. It was still fine in the end.
Yeah, in this world, there's no room for that, like trying to pull that apart.
Which is so refreshing. That's
Yeah.
why I love it.
Well, and I think this is a really good lesson, right? Because a lot of the time you see a movie that like sets its rules and sets its world up, but then is like a little too kind of bound to like real world logic, you know? And if you're middling over those two things, you're in trouble. Like you gotta pick which side of that you're gonna
how
be on.
much.
Yeah. And this just goes, no, that's not this movie, right? And so everything is fine. Whereas like something like, I don't know, I guess Insidious, you know, let's just shit on that movie some more. Where like, you know, there are times when you go, it doesn't work because it's changing its mind. And so, you know, don't do that.
Right.
Or try not to.
So yeah, that's
all you have?
I really don't have anything that didn't work for me about this film.
I have a couple things that are kind of, you know, I'm okay with them, but they were more sort of in the moment reactions where I'm like, and this is not the fault by any means of the movie, although knowing that it's 89, this sort of changes it a little bit. Music videos. There's a lot of this movie that just feels like a music video to me, a mid to late 80s music video.
Funny thing about that.
Right? And so there were a few moments when I just was like, not that I've seen this, but I'm like, it's just too music video-y was sort of my thought. And maybe it's just a product of sort of certain stylistic things, the fact that it's shot in 16,
Right.
the fact that it's black and white, the fact that it's low budget. So was basically every music video that was made in that era.
This reminds me similarly to what did we watch last? Oh yeah, Ju-on, how you were saying like just the whole thing of like the white ghost girl going and coming out. Like how you're like, okay, that's such a trope to have like the glitchy ghost. I'm like, but it's not because it was made when it was a potent, real, original thing. And my point of view is that it's more powerful because it's closer to the source when you still lump it with everything that's been come afterwards. Right. So that's same with the music video style.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Here.
That's why I hesitate to even really make a criticism of it, and certainly not criticize the filmmakers for it, because it's more. What I'm responding to is more that I've been exposed to things that are similar, and I'm kind of just noticing that.
Do you think you're ever able to like emotionally time travel to before the collective consciousness was furthered with this late 80s video aesthetic?
I don't know. I think I'm so prone to sort of make comparisons. Maybe I'll try and shut that part of my brain off in the future and see if it's possible. Yeah. But I think that's just the way my brain
I don't know, it's just
goes.
Like, maybe if you can, at least for me, it's like you have that immediate sense of when something is doing it because it's been done before, and that means it's creepy, and when it's actually being used effectively and originally.
But I just had a thought that kind of throws a wrench in what I'm saying. The moments that were John Carpenter-y or David Lynch-y for me, I was not going, yeah, but that's kind of John Carpenter. I was going, awesome. So it's more, I think, a response of criticism, right? It's like, I don't really like this thing, and it kind of reminds me of a thing I don't like.
Right. Yeah.
As opposed to the things I do like, where I'm like, I fucking love this thing. I love that thing. I love it. So it's a weird, I don't know, maybe I'll have to sort of investigate that for myself, of like why I'm having that reaction, but or whether or not I can not have that reaction.
Why do you think you can't?
I'm sure I can.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I've never tried. I'll try.
Right. But it's not, how is it something you could apply, intention to?
Well, I mean, in one sense, we're putting I'm sitting down to watch this movie and looking at it like through a critical lens, right? Like because I know that we're going to have this conversation afterwards, I'm using that part of my brain to assess. So I think it's hard for me to sit down and watch any of these movies and totally let go and just watch the movie, because I'm afraid I'm going to forget what, like,
right.
I'm not going to have, things to talk about because
That's
I didn't
what-
like make note.
I do take a different, I mean, I try to take note just sort of super briefly in my head when we do this if I really loved something or thought was interesting, but only to basically then try to immediately forget it because I am paying attention to the movie as if I'm just watching the movie. Because what I do and what I know is as soon as I start remembering one thing that was like one of those little like notes to self, it'll start coming out and I'll usually remember like 75% of, everything I was thinking during it. And that's
pretty good.
funny. But not, I can't just recall it. I sort of have to, okay, what was this? And then maybe I look at the summary online and then I'm like, oh yeah, that part I thought this.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Well, and I will say that since we've been doing this, I've given up on taking notes while we're watching.
Great.
Because it's distracting as fuck.
Yeah.
And then I missed stuff or whatever anyway. So it's like, well, just watch the movie. So I'm getting there.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't like,
or something that didn't work for you.
It didn't work as a design choice for me was the makeup, the sort of star makeup around the eyes of the metal fetishist.
Oh, the Bowie when he's like putting on that. Yeah.
It seemed actually out of place.
That I think I get that, but I think once I made the comparison of like it was an anime fight scene, that just seems so
right.
like
I agree.
A Japanime character almost to do that.
Very much. Do you know that the movie Death Note? Have you watched that yet?
No.
There is a shot in this movie that I am convinced is where whoever made Death Note like got the image of the character that's in Death Note. It's the metal fetishist standing in the garage sort of doorway. He's basically silhouette and he's very kind of like semi-hunched and his hair is super spiked. And I'm like, that's fucking Death Note right there. That's exactly the image. And I was like, oh shit. I wonder, they're probably related, right?
Right.
At least in some form or another. In a weird way, like what we were saying in things that we liked, the relentlessness of this movie, I can also say that it actually got a little too much for me at moments. So I'm putting that in a didn't work. It did, but it at times I was like, I need a break. But maybe that's good. Like maybe you're supposed to feel that way.
Right. It was, I don't know, whatever it was doing just worked for me. Where like since already as frenetic as it was, like there would be a moment where I'd be like, okay, now I'm here. Now I've quote, figured it out, let's say, just what this is. Then it would do something else to usurp that. Like,
yeah, that's true. You're right.
If it had been any seconds longer, then it would have actually been like, okay, let's move on. So
yeah,
I
think there was only two real moments where I was like, oh man, and then something would happen, like you're saying, and I'd be like, right back in.
Yeah.
So it's a really good job of actually knowing that you're hitting that point and editing properly.
Yeah. I would love to hear him talk about the editing of this film. Now I just want to read more about the making of this film.
I can't even imagine
it's so cool.
What that process was like.
It was filmed, and you get the sense from it. I mean, this is just more things that probably worked for us. I just think it's cool.
We're back in it.
How it was just like you could get the sense of the visceral film cutting going on of like, oh, and then here's the video part. I don't know. It was
yeah.
cool. Anyway,
man.
Maybe things of note. Should we move on? Did you have anything else?
I have a thing of note. Oh yeah, we should move to things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
I think it is of pinnacle note. Is that a way you could say something?
Yes.
To wonder what the state of mind this director was in. Like, what kind of person is this guy? Does that, you know what I mean? Like, I think generally I don't ever wonder that about a director. I want to know what this dude's thing is. Like, is he like a quiet, reserved guy?
Probably.
Or is he like a fucking maniac?
I think he's both. Like the best of us. Like it's anyone who I think we can all relate to being singularly obsessed with something.
Yeah.
and I mean, this, leads into the thing of, no, I put down, trivia. This was filmed over 18 months, primarily in the filmmaker's apartment. And it was the totally like the Evil Dead, style thing of crew members, no one being consistent because everyone's just getting up and leaving.
Oh my God. That's crazy.
So
18 months.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Which is shy of what the 5 years for Eraserhead. But I mean,
right.
It's exactly that same thing of like, something is so real and important to you that it's just like, well, we're just still going. We're just doing it. You just sort of don't stop and question it, which I'm sure, all of us can relate to at some point for something in our lives.
And in this case, it sure as shit worked.
Yeah.
Like it made, I'm like, I don't know if you get the same movie if you're on a 30-day or 20-day schedule. You just don't.
I mean, I like to think that how well something works can, maybe not always, but can be equated to how much you love the thing, that you're doing. Like,
absolutely.
Did we bring up on the show or in person, like when you're mad at Tommy Wiseau in the room and like how people like it? And I'm like, but the thing is, like, he loved it so much making it. He cared so much about the room, and that's why we love it. That's the thing that does translate through.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. Don't get me started.
Yeah, no.
Because I have, like, that, my opinion on that is, like, kind of constantly, like, circling itself.
Right.
So.
Thing of note, this was almost for me in things that didn't work for me, but I realized it was just a thing I didn't enjoy, I didn't like, or or it wasn't fun to experience. Was just the moment of the cat being like transformed and tortured,
unpleasant,
which is just like, which is funny in that I didn't want to put on a thing that didn't work for me, because not only did it work in like actually reaching the level of horror that I probably should be feeling for these people, but just don't. But it also
I should be empathizing with these human beings, but I really just only give a fuck about the cat.
Right. But I thought it also was a good way to set up how they could be
that's like
taking
by the way, that's like every girl I've ever tried to date.
Right.
They're like, I love my cat way more than I love people. And I'm like, aw.
I mean, that's how
this doesn't bode well for me.
Watching horror films, that's more often than not the case.
I get it.
But it was I actually thought it worked not only in the actually horrifying me in some sense, which was good. And I'm not just totally numb, but it's what I want from a horror film. But it also worked like to show that they could take over and how that could look like of their ending. It's sort of a setup to like, oh, they have some sort of ability to transform their surroundings, both organic and inorganic.
And it indicates that this is not just happening to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like stepping over the threshold and being like, just so you know, this is like we're expanding into the real world.
Right.
If you thought that we weren't in the real world, and whether or not we were doesn't matter, because we've now stepped one step further.
What if of this film that's kind of interesting, because the victim who becomes the Iron Man was just a what was I going to say? Well, because it starts with a metal fetishist.
Right.
So it's like his fetishes, almost like I was saying, the love of what you're making translating to the end result. His fetishism is the thing that was so potent and powerful that was able to magic and literalize out into the world.
Yeah. It's pretty sweet. It's
it's a beautiful thing. So just the last, I just thought this was fun. Glancing over the Wikipedia, there is a Tetsuo 2 body hammer released in 1992. And there is a Tetsuo 3, Tetsuo the Bullet Man, released in 2009.
The Body Hammer and the Bullet Man?
Body Hammer and the Bullet Man.
Oh boy.
But
I can only imagine.
Pretty cool how it goes from 89 to 2009 is the most recent.
That's a big...
and the Bullet Man was apparently an English production or made in English. So that was cool and noteworthy. If you don't know your Tetsuo trivia.
Very
or haven't
interesting.
seen them, and this is fresh for you as it is for us.
Yeah. The other thing of note that's sort of in reading about this a little bit is the use of the term cyberpunk. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure.
You mean around this film and how people refer
Yeah.
to it as like cyberpunk horror, body horror, basically.
Yeah. I'm like, it's really interesting to me because I don't know. It's right. It is, but I would not have classified it as such.
I'm not ever
It's
too crazy about the
That's-
cyberpunk genre or thing.
But I guess at its core, it's just really, it's sort of biomechanical.
Yeah,
Cyberpunk,
For
right?
me, it feels like it is that because it's it's mech punk
Right.
more so. Because it's punk and just the grittiness and the in-your-faceness, the bombacity of
Yeah.
it, the aesthetic, everything.
But like,
But it's-
I've also heard Geiger referred to as cyberpunk, and that doesn't
That's
really
pretty
feel
loose.
right to me either. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I was a little like, is that quite really the term? I
Right.
don't know. Wikipedia or whatever I was reading.
Yeah, I'm curious how the world actually defines that.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting note where you compared to or used, you mentioned John Carpenter. You saw him in this where he wasn't one that was jumping out to me. Like I even said a little Tim Burton when it jumping to the fantasy images, but
Carpenter, The Thing. Mm-hmm. Like
oh yeah, the body horror. in
the
that
body
sense.
horror
Okay.
and the sort of the design of the monster being sort of multiple things coming together into this larger thing. And there was even a couple like heads coming out of that kind of stuff that reminded me of The Thing. So that's really what I was grabbing. There's also sort of some practical effect body horror that felt very similar to the style of that stuff in The Thing specifically.
Got it. All right. Anything else you had for things of note?
Nope. Aronofsky, you mentioned him.
Yeah.
I was sort of like, seems like that he was influenced at least to some degree, potentially.
Right. Who until with Mother, which I loved, I would not yet give the recognition of just a last name referral. He's great and I love him, but I would have
fair.
said Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah.
But now with Mother, he earned it in my book.
Cool.
Okay, so should
Good
we
job, Darren. You did it.
move on to any recommendations we have for our listeners?
Oh, damn it. I had one. I don't remember what it was.
I was thinking on the way over here what I'd recommended, and I haven't watched a whole lot, but I have watched, and this isn't a recommendation to everyone. This is just coming off of last week's Ju-on the Grudge.
Oh.
I watched the sequel to that, which is the fourth in the Ju-on Japanese series called Ju-on the Grudge 2. And if you liked Ju-on the Grudge, I can definitely recommend this one.
Oh.
It was really
You can,
cool.
You can what it?
Recommend it.
There you go.
Thank you. Recommended it. It was cool. It had an actress as the main character, and there was actually Tim. I think you might have dug it in some other ways more, where there was actually sort of more of a through line idea in it that sort of had a payoff.
Cool.
And rather than being sort of an in between of like the super sparse eeriness of the original video shot ones and like trying to be a big Hollywood movie.
Oh, yeah.
This was just more in the direction of a Hollywood movie. So it was like just the scares, the moments that are just, the ghost is going up to the camera moments, which is just the thing
Nice.
in The Grudge. Those were just like, okay, great. They're just bigger and louder and sure, I'm down.
Cool.
So I liked it. If you like those movies.
I might get into it.
Yeah, if you like those movies, I can recommend that.
I'm sorry, I can't remember mine, so oh well. I'll think
You
of it
got to
next
give us
week.
something. What about something you ate that's new, Tim,
Oh, that was horrifying.
that you can recommend, Ed?
I had a
store?
really, really pleasant mac and cheese at this I don't know, it was a bar restaurant.
Where? You got to recommend
It
it.
was called the Granville, I believe, and it's on Ventura Boulevard.
Okay.
And oh man, I don't want to actually say what I feel like I should say. It's an interesting place. There's some weird dichotomy or
So you
dichotomy?
can't fully recommend
I don't
Ed
want to trash
the
it
place.
because I like the place. But go there and then maybe tweet at me or something
What was
about
it
your experience.
called again?
I think it's the Granville.
And you can recommend Ed the mac and cheese.
I can recommend the mac and cheese. It had peas, asparagus, chicken, and mac and cheese all in one, and it was
I like
quite
that
delicious.
combo.
But if you go there, tell me if something feels odd about that place. I'm curious to see what people
It's
think.
great. So any of our fellow Los Angeles listeners,
Yeah.
there you go. All right.
God,
so
I hope it's called the Granville.
on Ventura.
Something like that.
So next week's movie, we haven't talked it out yet, but we should talk it
Ooh,
out now.
I think I need a palate cleanser.
I was going to suggest that because you agreed to 4 J-horror,
Yeah.
and
I did.
and this
stick
could
with
be a
that.
break.
Yep.
Would you want to go to the movies again?
I kind of do. Is that Krasinski movie out yet? The where everybody has to be quiet.
I don't think so. Right, the John Krasinski
Is that something
movie.
you would?
I would see that.
Would you? Oh, cool.
But is that out next week? I don't think so.
I don't know. We'll have to look it up.
I was going to suggest, because I don't think that's coming out for a bit still.
Yeah,
But
you're
what
probably
is
right.
out is a film directed by another filmmaker whose film we've watched.
Oh.
Can you put that all together?
Oh boy. Oof.
I only know it because I looked it up.
Man,
So
I'm feeling a
the
lot of
film
pressure.
that I suggest we see is
What have we watched
Strangers.
The
Pray at Night
Yeah.
or something like that. It's the new Strangers
Yeah.
film.
I liked the first Strangers.
I didn't see it.
Okay.
But the director of it directed 47 Meters Down.
Oh, one of my faves.
So I say we should watch that
and
next time.
that guy. God, I wish
Johannes?
Yeah, Johannes. It was. What did it say at the beginning? It was like a Johannes.
Yeah.
Something.
So we
picture.
hope to get the same thing
Yeah.
again.
I hope it says that.
Strangers Pray at Night. I want
He
to
better
say.
be consistent with his titling.
Right. So you want
Yeah.
to see you here next time for that?
You know that's out for sure?
Yeah,
Let's
it's
do
out.
it. I'm in.
Great.
I love weird masks.
Awesome.
They're
Looking
the
forward to
best.
it.
All right.
So, well, until then, you can find us on our website. We're
Yeah.
going to get dismemberinghorror.com, and then we have a Twitter,
Yep. That's at dishorrorpod.
and our Gmail is,
dismemberinghorror@gmail.com.
and I'm at Ryan McDuffie, MCDUFFIE.com.
And I am at Tim Aslin. I am at Tim Aslin. TIMASLIN.
With that, this is Ryan,
This is Tim.
and we are signing off.
See ya. Boo. Stay scared.